And you know we need to build this transit. You support the building of it, and it's not going to be free. These people who peddle these lines to you about how it's all going to come from private money or this kind of thing, and that somehow it's going to be painless and free to you, they are peddling you snake oil. They are.
That's what caused some of the power outages in City Place. And if you look at the amount that they have on the books to spend or to invest in the next period of time to improve upon things like that, then they're going to need a lot of money. And let's be honest about this. I mean, this is where I try to be really honest with people. There are only basically three places that money can come from to build out the electricity network. They can come from the taxpayers' money, in other words, just raising taxes at the city to pay for it, and we then put an equity injection into an organization we own. They can come from the suspension of our dividend, for example, which would be a start for them at $60 million a year. That then leaves us with a problem, so we have to raise taxes. Or it can come from, in some other way, tapping into the value of Toronto Hydro and using that money to help them do what they must do.
Not sell the real estate than to have to sell it and use the money to solve a short-term budget crisis. Why do I say this? Well, two reasons. The first, you can't burn your furniture to stay warm in the winter. The more graphic example is eating your internal organs to stay alive. Eventually, it, shall we say, if you're eating internal organs to stay alive, doesn't work out because you die. If you sell an asset, you must apply the proceeds to either paying down debt, and we've got $3 billion of debt plus in the City of Toronto. It costs $450 million of your tax dollars per year in interest. So we've either got to pay down debt with the money or buy another asset. If you pay down debt, of course, you'll get rid of some of the interest charges, and that will help the budget problem of the city. The other problem I have with selling assets and then just using it to pay off today's budget problem is it postpones the day of tough decisions we have to make about how to cut down on spending. It's a bad idea if they're going to burn the furniture to keep warm, eat the internal organs to stay alive. From selling an asset and putting it into solving a budget hole on operating a spending, as it were, is something that I think would be evil. But you just can't put it to paying, your current bills, sort of feeding yourself dinner with the sale proceeds of your house. You'll run out of money to pay for dinner before too long. No, I'm saying that you came out in a very hasty manner and said you were going to sell that off, which I would not do.
Okay, but I didn't ask you about that.
I would not sell Toronto Hydro.
I asked you if you would support taxes to build transit, yes or no. And I'm not sure the viewers have a clear answer on that one.
Well,
so
the bottom line is that money that comes in from taxpayers is used to pay for transit, no matter which taxpayers it comes from, federal, provincial, or municipal. I will have a complete plan as to how that transit will be paid for. But whether as a politician or as the head of Civic Action, the single most frustrating part of all of those experiences for me has been the unwillingness of people in public life to level with you, whether you're taxpayers, voters, citizens, you as people. It's not that they're all lying. A minority actually do that. A minority lie, but just a minority. But I would argue a majority don't and won't tell the whole truth, the real truth, and nothing but the truth. And so it has been with transportation and transit. How do you pay for those road improvements and that transit? Let me deal with a couple of the answers offered up by those who are either not being honest with you or who don't understand finances very well. There are those who say, pay for it out of savings on government waste. I want to be clear. You know how I feel about this. There is still massive waste in all of the governments. Most of it, I believe, in the form of middle level. And by the way, don't be comforted by that description, because middle level in government terms mean people making $100,000 in compensation and benefits and so on. But I believe there are literally thousands of middle level people in all of these governments who don't actually deliver any government services themselves. They design them, and they debate them, and they analyze them, and they compare them, and they study them, and they talk about them, and they go to conferences about them, but they don't actually deliver any government services. Nobody in government ever really does what we desperately need, which is to weed a lot of those people out. They're overhead, they don't add value, they don't deliver a service. And if we did that, it won't produce a lot of money to put into transit, because then we might just be able, maybe, to balance the budget. There will not be $2 billion extra left over for transit if we did that. So the same people might then say, okay, if you don't like that argument, let's use private money. You all know that using private money is a real and viable option, but private money either means you give something up, the person with the money owns the transportation link, like the 407, for example. That'll be enough to scare a lot of you who'll say, oh, don't go down that road. Well, either if they give you private money, you let them own the asset and run it and charge the fares they want for it, or you pay the private money back over time, plus interest, just like your mortgage. And that raises the question of where do you get the money to pay it back? And nobody, least of all the people quite logically arguing in favor of the use of private money, nobody has been honest in telling you that it has to be paid back and telling you how it will be paid back and by whom.